Katia Plant Scientist. Do you want to see what kind of tomatoes I have in my little greenhouse here? Well then come on in, come with me. Watch out, it's a jungle in there. So what's the answer to the question of how many tomatoes can I fit into this tiny house? I have a total of 20 individual tomato plants in this small greenhouse. A little greenhouse like this is the perfect habitat for tomatoes because it stays warm and gets plenty of sunlight. Also, with our tomatoes being trimmed as they are, it's very easy to water and do all the essential maintenance on each plant. Today, I'm going to introduce you to some of the exciting and unusual varieties of tomatoes. It's amazing that the tomato species Solanum lycopersicum is one species, but it seems to have endless variations due to its diverse genetics. Let's begin with an old favorite of British gardens. So let's take an up-close look at the Gardener's Delight tomato. The Gardener's Delight tomato is your basic round, red, tasty tomato. This has been grown for generations here in the UK and is very popular. It is a versatile tomato that's great for tomato salads and just eating as well, and you can use it in cooking and garnishes. It's a very prolific plant. As you can see, it has many trusses of unripe tomatoes on it that are yet to develop. Maybe we can have a little look at these unripe ones. See, that's how they look when they're not ripe yet. Now we have a much more unusual kind of tomato down here. This is called an orange ray tomato. And you would be forgiven for thinking that this thing is actually a sweet pepper, but no, it's really a tomato. This is a mysterious new variety of tomato that only appeared recently in seed catalogs. And as you can see, it produces a lot of tomatoes per plant. I haven't eaten one yet, but I hear that they're very good for slicing due to their long rod-like shape. Now, here's another beautiful and delicious tomato. This is called the Rosella tomato. And you see how it's kind of a rosy red color, kind of rosy reddish pink. When they're fully ripe, they're an even deeper shade of reddish pink. And they have a kind of fruity flavor that's almost a bit like raspberry meets tomato. I think these are especially delicious as little sweet snacks, but they're also great in tomato salad. Here is one of the newest stars of the tomato world. This is called a shimmer tomato, and this is a newly developed form of variegated tomato that only became available to home gardeners in 2018. Something that makes this tomato special is its beautiful coloring, which is a variegated pattern of dark green and red. Now, this tomato is not just a pretty face, it also tastes delicious. It's very sweet and juicy, and it has very firm flesh, so it does store quite well. The interior flesh is actually an olive green color rather than red. So we've met one of our newest tomatoes. Let's meet one of our oldest tomatoes now. These beautiful light bulb shaped tomatoes are called yellow pear tomatoes. This is an heirloom variety of American tomato that has been popular since the early 1800s. It appears in seed catalogs from the United States as early as, say, the 1850s. So this is really a historic variety. And it's still just as delicious and beautiful nowadays as it was back then. This tomato becomes ripe a little bit later in the season than some of our other varieties, so that's good to bear in mind if you're growing it and would like a long harvest of tomatoes with the different varieties staggered over the months between June and November. And that's right, we even had tomatoes at Christmas last year that we had stored from our last harvest in November. Moving on, let's meet the lucky Lucciola. The Lucciola tomato is this cute, elongated fire truck red tomato. It's a very jolly looking one. So the Lucciola tomato originates in Italy, and they were bred in the early 1800s when preserved foods like canning started becoming more mainstream. These tomatoes have a firm flesh that makes them very good for slicing, and they're great for canning because they hold their shape. This type of tomato is called a datarini tomato in Italy, which means date-shaped, and as you can see with its elongated shape, it does resemble a date. I think these are great for tomato salad and for sandwiches. Next, we have a superstar of the tomato world. This one is the famous Sungold tomato. These little cuties are said to be the sweetest and tastiest tomatoes you can grow at home. They were bred in Japan in the early 90s, and they're actually an F1 hybrid. That means that all the seeds you buy at the store are actually a hybrid of two other varieties. What are these two varieties? Well, I would like to know as well. It's a closely guarded industry secret. But this means that these guys are not worth saving seeds from, because the tomatoes you get will be a mix of characteristics and won't be exactly like the parents. Let's move on to some other beautiful tomatoes. This is the Tigerella tomato. This is another type of variegated tomato. And I couldn't find a whole lot about its history, but it's one of our favorites here because it's a nice medium-sized red tomato that's great for slicing and eating as an hors d'oeuvre drizzled with olive oil, salt, and green onions. That's our favorite way to serve it. You can tell when these guys are fully ripe because their tiger stripes turn from green to yellow, and then you know they're ready. Now, a tomato with one of the funniest names in our collection has got to be the green zebra. So here is a beautiful green zebra tomato. This one was developed by the famous tomato breeder Tom Wagner in America in the 1980s. This tomato is unusual because it is green when it's fully ripe, and it's very versatile. It's got a lovely savory tomato flavor, so it's not overly sweet, but I find that it is great on sandwiches and with fine, strong flavored cheeses as a partner. Like the Tigerella, you can tell it's ready to eat when parts of it turn from green to yellow, and that's something that a lot of growers get confused with these green tomatoes. When is it ripe? It doesn't turn red. What do I do? Just look for the yellow instead. Let's go over and meet the black cherry tomato. Aren't these beautiful? They almost look like they were carved out of garnet or amethyst gemstones. This is a popular variety of cherry tomato here in the UK. The black cherry, it's a little bit different from the Rosella. It grows a bit bigger and plumper. And it is known for being a very productive tomato. It just makes truss after truss after truss all through the growing season. So if you want a lot of tomatoes to fill out your tomato salads and other dishes, this is a good friend. And I think the fruits are very beautiful and full of great sweet tomatoey flavor. Now, if you've seen some of my other tomato videos, you already know about this Gothic beauty. This is the blue Bayou tomato. This is another tomato developed by the breeder Tom Wagner recently, and it's only in the last few years become available to home growers. This is one of our bigger tomatoes, and it has a delicious red wine flavor and is great as a sliced tomato on salads and sandwiches. As viewers of my other video remember, when these parts that are green turn dark red, that means it's ready to harvest. And in order to get the fruits as dark as possible, they must be grown in full sunlight. Otherwise, they just look like an ordinary red tomato. Let's go down and have a look at some ripe examples. Look at that. Yep, see this one here, this one has some red on it. So do these down here. Down here. See, look, these have some nice red shading on them. So these two will soon be ready to eat. And that concludes our tour of the tomato house. As you can see, nature's diversity with a bit of human ingenuity and selection is truly a wonder. Thank you for joining me on the tour of the tomato house, and I hope that seeing these delicious and colorful varieties of tomatoes will inspire you to start growing your own food at home. Thank you, and see you next time. Stay curious about plants.